Greetings, Africans. Hope everyone is doing well today. Welcome to the final session, final discussion this week of the African Heritage Studies Association at PANAFEST 2021. This has been a week of exciting discussions, exciting new people that we have met and organizations that we have been able to meet, some fruitful partnerships that we think will take place to elevate and help us continue our work of reconstructing, restoring, and disseminating Africana history, culture, thought, all of the things that we need to do to help us be African, to help us move towards African sovereignty. And today, one of the key aspects of what we do as an organization, and the reason that we're here at PANAFEST, is that we are always in dialogue about Pan-Africanism and our young people, and how we can both work on their development and growth in Africana studies, but also as Pan-Africanists, cultural nationalists who are dedicated to doing things in the interest of African people, wherever they may be, and see themselves as African. Today, we are privileged to have with us our final keynote speaker for the week, Baba Chinweizu. I'm going to share my screen and read his bio for everyone. And invite him to give us some words of wisdom, and I know he will be challenging us on many levels in his discussion. So welcome again, Baba Chinweizu. Thank you so much for making time to be with us. It is always an honor to have you in our in my space and engaged in become better Africans and do the work of organizing ourselves and moving Black people forward. So Baba Chinweizu is a Pan-Africanist, elder, and historian. His published books include The West and the Rest of Us, Decolonizing the African Mind, and Caliphate Colonialism, the taproot of the trouble with Nigeria. He contributed to Volume 8 of UNESCO's General History of Africa. His 2018 Chinweizu Conference lecture on 432 Centuries of Recorded Science and Technology in Black Africa has just been published in the journal Volume 4, is that 4 through 8? A special edition on Chinweizu, which I have to get. While holding of life, okay, Chinweizu is dodging senility and boredom by working on a 9-volume history of Pan-Africanism from the 1440s through 2015. His discussion today is entitled Black Youth and the Task of Upgrading Pan-Africanism for the 21st Century. We look forward to hearing his words of wisdom, and I invite Baba Chinweizu to address the audience. Now, I will turn on his camera There we go, so we can see him.
Afia, thank you very
And
much.
Kwesi, if you're there, can you let us have a speaker view for him? Is Kwesi there with you, Baba?
Yes, he is. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Okay, we want him to.
Can I go on, or there's something more?
Have you be on speaker view. I want Kwesi to have you be on speaker view. There we go. There we go.
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. And greetings to the youth of Black Africa in the homeland and the diaspora. The AHSA says its youths are those in the 15 to 36 age bracket. I hear the WHO has reclassified the age groups, and youths are now those aged 18 to 65. That means that parents and their grandchildren are both youths. No wonder there seems to be a pandemic of youths with gray beards. Youths who are reporting prostate cancer, hot flushes, and other menopause symptoms. Toothless gums, brittle bones, cataracts, Alzheimer's, and other formerly geriatric ailments. You all know who or what the WHO is. You should know, if only for your health's sake. The WHO is that still unconfessed and unrepentant AIDS bomber of Black Africa. But who cares what these overpriced and underemployed bureaucrats do or decree to justify their fat salary sinecures? You are free to obey the WHO, but me, I'm staying with the AHSA's traditional classification. It makes common sense. The 15 to 36 age bracket. That means I'm talking to those in the generation born after 1984, 5 years after I quit academia and stopped being a professor. Good evening, my grandchildren. I am talking to you as a grandfather to his grandchildren, not as a professor or a pastor or a guru whose words you must accept without question. After all, fools also grow old without outgrowing their foolishness. Old age or gray hair is not an infallible sign of lack of foolishness, let alone a sign of wisdom. You still need to question and test everybody's advice, even those of grandparents. So I invite you to switch on your critical minds as you listen to me. I'm going to present to you a series of questions and comments, and at the end, point you to where you can begin to look for answers, clarifications, and solutions to them. But first, the bad news. If Black people keep on behaving and believing as they have been doing since 1945, one thing is almost as certain as anything can be. They will be exterminated by the end of the 21st century. That's by the year 2100. This behavior ranges from addiction to African time or CP time to believing that the African Union, the AU, is the instrument that will save and prosper them. It includes the delusion that one is white or not black, even if one is blacker than 10 midnights. It includes the craving to lift up the color of one's children by marrying whites or near whites. It includes the idea that being black isn't part of being an African, and that a person can be an African without being black. Black people complain about their situation and pray for and demand racial equality, human rights, and a world where Black lives matter. But they doggedly evade the task of building the Black power that's the only thing that could grant and guarantee these excellent desires. That's the bad news. The good news is that they could grant themselves all these desires if they seriously wanted them. And that how to get them is not a secret or a mystery. All they need to do is look into their own traditions to find the truths that a long line of Black prophets and truth speakers have told them in the last few centuries. So far, they have been deaf to these truth speakers. Will they heed them from now on? That's the question. Please note, we ourselves, not the enemy, are entirely responsible for our failures and defeats. It is not the enemy's strength, but our own weaknesses that prevent us from finding ways to overcome, dodge, or outwit whatever the enemy throws at us. If we don't accept this fact, this principle of ultimate responsibility, we are seekers of alibis instead of seekers of victory. And we deserve nothing but defeats and extermination. Despite the great hopes it aroused, 20th century Pan-Africanism has been a great failure. We therefore need to rethink Pan-Africanism, starting from the basics. So it's back to basics, back to diagnostics. The 20th century Pan-Africanism equipped to solve the 21st century problems of Black Africans in the homeland and the diaspora? And if it is not, what is to be done? In my opinion, 20th century Pan-Africanism is not equipped intellectually, it's not equipped organizationally, it's not equipped even psychologically for the tasks facing Black Africans in this 21st century. I shall now highlight some key 21st century problems of the Black Africans in the homeland and the diaspora, and point the youths to some places where they can begin their search for remedies for our intellectual, psychological, and organizational shortcomings. What are the problems that Pan-Africanism arose and undertook to solve? Have they been solved? If so, how? If not, why not? Whose problems were they, and how did they arise? This is the issue of the origins, proper constituency, and proper concerns of Pan-Africanism. What would constitute solutions to these problems? We need criteria for telling when they are solved. Why don't Black lives matter? Why is there anti-Blacks racism in the world? When and how did it begin? How can it be ended? What created these problems? What happened to Black Africans during the period when these problems were created? This addresses the E. Franklin Frazier complaint that American Negro intellectuals never begin with the fundamental fact of what slavery has done to the Negroes in the United States. Now ask yourself, does a competent physician try to cure a patient without finding out when and how the ailment came about? In seeking solutions for our plight, we must begin by finding out what happened to us during slavery. Isn't it possible that even the name Africans that we adopted and applied to ourselves is not a help, but a handicap in our efforts to solve our problems? Isn't it possible that 20th century Pan-Africanism has been a Pan-Africanism of false solutions to false problems, as well as false solutions to real problems? What was the role of the so-called transatlantic slave trade in provoking Pan-Africanism into existence? We have learned from Elder Marimba Ani to replace with the name Maafa the Eurocentric and grossly inappropriate term transatlantic slave trade. So let me rephrase that question. What was the role of the Maafa in bringing about Pan-Africanism? I submit for your examination the proposition that the Maafa is the historical cause, anchor, and guiding light of Pan-Africanism. Therefore, an authentic Pan-Africanism is one which is firmly tied to the anchor of the Maafa experience and is still guided by its light. And the counterfeit Pan-Africanism is one that has lost its ties to the anchor of the Maafa experience and is no longer guided by its light. In my opinion, the Pan-Africanism of 1440s to 1940 is the only authentic Pan-Africanism that existed so far. Two varieties of Pan-Africanism have dominated the Black African world since 1940. The first is the Pan-African Congresses, PACs, that Du Bois started in 1919 and that Padmore and Du Bois energized at the Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester in 1945. The second was birthed by the twin conferences that Nkrumah and Padmore launched in 1958, namely the Conference of Independent African States, CIAS, and the All African People's Conference, AAPC. These twin conferences are the grandparents of this useless African Union that excludes the Black African diaspora that started Pan-Africanism. This useless AU that's in the pockets of whoever will pay the grand salaries of its bureaucrats, including the Western imperialists that it is supposed to save us from, and the Arab imperialists as well. In my opinion, both of these are counterfeit Pan-Africanisms because they detach themselves from the Maafa in their constituency or in their agenda or both. In 1900, a conference in London launched Pan-Africanism as an organized global movement. Unfortunately, many Pan-Africanists today are not aware of the specific tasks that 1900 conference set for Pan-Africanism. So what are these tasks? Let me itemize them. Number one, to promote a feeling of unity through friendly intercourse among the peoples of the Negro or African race. Number two, to approach governments and influence legislation in the interest of the Black races. Number 3, to achieve self-rule with civil rights and responsible Black governments for colonized Negro countries. Number 4, to achieve voting rights, physical security, prosperity, progress, and justice for Africans abroad, that is, Negroes in the countries of the white race. Number 5, to encourage African peoples everywhere in educational, industrial, and commercial enterprise, and to promote the business interests of Africans abroad, that is, African people living in the countries of the whites. Number 6, to create a great central Negro state in Africa for the Black race. Number 7, to secure integrity and independence for self-governing Negro countries, namely Ethiopia, Haiti, Liberia, and any others that emerge. And number 8, to earn for the Negro race equality with and the respect of the other races of humanity. Are you all familiar with the term Maafa that Elder Marimba Ani gave us? If accomplished, this 1900 agenda would bring an end to the Maafa legacy and usher the African, Negro, or Black race into a post-Maafa world, the world of item number 8, a world without anti-Negro racism, a world where Black people would survive in security and prosperity with self-respect and the respect of the other races of humanity. Kwesi? Kwesi? Please note that in the founding statements of Pan-Africanism, the terms Negro, Black, and African are used as synonyms. They designated the same thing. If you pointed correctly at an African, you would see a Negro or Black person, not a white person, whether Arab or European. Needless to say, 20th century Pan-Africanism failed to accomplish that agenda. And that's why Black lives still don't matter anywhere in the world today. What are the fundamental problems of Black Africans today in the homeland and the diaspora? Where can the solutions be found? Our 3 fundamental problems were first identified by Marcus Garvey in the 1920s, and he offered their correct solutions to us. The first problem was what Garvey called the Negro's peculiar mentality, and that Amos Wilson later called the Negro's pathological normalcy, and that Fela called Kolo mentality, and that others have called slave mentality, and that I call nigger craziness. Garvey's solution for this peculiar mentality was mass psychotherapy, such as he carried out through his UNIA propaganda. The second problem was the futility and dangers of racial integration. The third problem is the danger of extermination of Negroes. And what was Garvey's solution? Garvey saw that this danger is due to the powerlessness of the Negro race. And so his solution was Black power of every kind in every community of Blacks, guaranteed by a Black superpower in Africa, which would act as the core state and leader and protector of Blacks everywhere on earth. In the same way that the white superpowers are the core states that lead and protect, where that China is the yellow superpower that leads and protects yellow people everywhere on earth. Garvey's solution to this third problem is also the solution to the second problem, because it would guarantee any equality that's granted to Blacks by integration in white majority countries. 21st century Pan-Africanism must implement these basic Garvey solutions: mass psychotherapy and the Black superpower. African folk tales teach us that no one person's bag contains or can contain all the wisdom in the world. Therefore, not even the great and incomparable Garvey could have had the solutions to all the Marfa-inflicted problems of Black Africans in the homeland and the diaspora, or all the wisdom and doctrines we need to solve our problems. For example, here are two wise doctrines that Garvey did not contribute. The first was by Amilcar Cabral, and I quote, "After every operation against the enemy, we must assess the results of that action and the behavior of every combatant, derive all the lessons from this action in order to make new and better actions in education, in production, in commercial activity, in care, in all branches of our life and our struggle. We must be capable of criticizing and of accepting criticism. But criticism, proof of the willingness of others to help us or of our willingness to help others, must be complemented by self-criticism, proof of our own willingness to help ourselves to improve our thoughts and action. The second example was contributed by the Sisi kwa Sisi youth group of Tanzania when they participated in the 7th PAC in 1994. They said, and I quote, "No one man has the solution to the multitude of problems that confront us as a race of people," unquote. 21st century Pan-Africanism cannot, therefore, be entirely based on the doctrines of any one person or any one person's name-ism, not even on Garveyism, let alone on Marxism, which was not even created to solve the problems inflicted on Blacks by the Maafa, but to solve the problems of the European proletariat. Therefore, in addition to the Garvey doctrines and solutions, 21st century Pan-Africanism must consciously draw upon the wisdom which Pan-Africanist leaders and thinkers have gathered from their various anti-Maafa struggles, especially those available from the time Boukman started the Haitian Revolution. I have gathered some of these in a forthcoming anthology titled Pan-Africanist Wisdom, From Boukman to Biko. I'm setting up a website where all these issues and many more will be documented and explained in greater detail. When the website is ready, in about 2 weeks' time, you can consult it and make use of the resources harvested there. In tackling the 21st century problems of the Black race, I invite you to take the roof off your imagination, expand your horizons, learn from anyone in the world who offers something you can find useful. Consider the following examples and apply them in your Pan-Africanism. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. That was by Albert Einstein. In all affairs, it's a healthy thing now and then to hang a question mark on the things you have long taken for granted. That's Bertrand Russell. However beautiful the strategy, you should occasionally look at the results. That's Winston Churchill. I hope you will all study the lessons of the Chinese Revolution in the last 50 years, develop its good points, and discard its mistakes. That's Mao Zedong. I don't care if it's a white cat or a black cat. It's a good cat as long as it catches mice. That's Deng Xiaoping. For every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. That's H.L. Mencken. Finally, let me invite the use of Black Africa in the homeland and the diaspora, especially the best and the brightest among them, to step up to the challenge of the 21st century and to begin their apprenticeship in leadership, as it is the future of their generation that's most at stake today. And let me end where I began. Let me end with this advice. Don't be lazy, uncritical listeners. Don't be gullible morons. Don't be sycophantic parrots and hagiographers. Mid-20th century Pan-Africanism had too many of those, and they are the last things needed in 21st century Pan-Africanism if it is to lead Black people to survive in security and prosperity with self-respect and the respect of the other races of humanity. Thank you very much. I'm done. My friend, what's going on?
Thank you so much, Baba Chinweizu. I'm going to go right into the Q&A session and see if we have any questions from the audience, especially the young people who he was talking to, but for, of course, as he said, all of us really need to explore what he had to say and challenge ourselves to do the work of Marcus Garvey, Mama Marimba, and all of those who have pointed out challenges that we have since we have been enslaved. You can unmute yourself if you have a question, and feel free to pose your question to Baba Chinweizu. Or raise your hand if you want to, so I can see you. You can also type any question you have in the chat. We also have some students here in the room with me from UCC African Studies. So you also, if you have a question, you can let us know. No questions, no comments? Wow, this is a first. So we have one question from Mama Nabantu. Greetings, Mama. Thank you again for being with us this week. Her question is, what does mass psychotherapy look like?
Well, first of all, it's psychotherapy, but you do it for thousands and millions of people. And the best example we have of that was Marcus Garvey going around talking, lecturing, excoriating, educating Black people during the 1920s, partly through his newspaper, The Negro World, but mostly by live discussions and lectures and talks. He used to crisscross the United States and give speeches all over the place, challenging Black people to do what they should be doing, reminding them of who they were before the calamities hit them. There are civilizations in the past that they should emulate and challenge them.
Baba, we can't hear you very well.
Yeah, let Kwesi solve that.
Can you bring the microphone closer from his computer or turn the volume up? We're not hearing him very well.
Have you done that? Can you hear me well now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. No, what I was describing was Garvey's method of carrying out mass psychotherapy. His main instrument was education, historical education, letting people who had been taught that they were no good, that they came from a no good race, showing them the history of their people, their great achievements in the past, and challenging them to do like their forefathers did. That was the essence of his program of mass psychotherapy, using historical information to stir their memories and their ambitions and teach them to become agents in their own interest, rather than waiting for the white boy to come and do everything for them. Challenging them and saying, you want equality, but you ain't gonna get equality until you do the things that other people have done. You can't just be wishing for equality and expect to get it. So it was both lectures and challenges, reminding people that their God is a God that created them to be equal to all the other peoples in the world. Furthermore, since most people at that time had no recollection of the kind of society they needed to create, he dramatized a powerful African society by holding all kinds of celebrations and court sessions, holding parades on the street so that they could see what a powerful African country might look like. So this was the challenge. I've told you about it. Now see for yourself images of what you could be. And this worked miracles on a lot of people. I don't know if I've given you enough to give you an insight into what mass psychotherapy did, that Garvey did. You now have to find the equivalent in this age, equivalent ways of achieving the same effect, of making Black people understand that they must create that power, give them images of a powerful an African superpower that could protect them wherever they are on earth. That's in brief what the mass psychotherapy would have to do. Get rid of their craziness. Because Garvey knew that one of his problems was getting rid of the craziness, which he called the peculiar mentality, which prevented people from understanding what they were being taught. So we must find our psychologists and psychiatrists should get onto the job and find out how we can conduct it in this modern age.
Okay, we have another question in the chat. How can the great central Negro state be created without going the way of Biafra, given that the land of Black people is currently occupied by Berlin Conference neo-colonial cages?
Well, that's a very important question, and it has to be figured out. You have to figure out how to overcome or dissolve these Berlin Conference entities, and then reorganize and create what you need. These Berlin Conference entities aren't going to give it to you. Territorially, organizationally, intellectually, mentally, they are not geared to doing that kind of a job. So ultimately, you have to dissolve these entities and put together enough of those that can do the job. And incidentally, you don't have to do a huge continental African Union state to achieve what is required. First of all, industrialization does not require a huge country, because that was part of the mistake of those who thought that the only way to industrialize Africa was to create a continental union government that would be able to use the entire continent as its market. Now, if you look into the history of economic development and industrialization, there are very few cases that needed a huge continent as their market and organizing unit. Britain did not need to. Britain is a small country, yet it industrialized. France, Germany, Luxembourg, name them. And in the modern 20th century, Singapore is only a tiny island, but it did the job. Malaysia did the job. North Korea did the job. South Korea did the job. So you don't need a huge state to do the job. So our first point is to look at the economic history of industrialization. And we realize that it's not the size of the country that is the issue. It is the orientation and determination of the people to industrialize. Then they can figure out the ways to do it. But we just a lot of negative thinking that has to be given up. The first and most important is the idea that you need the African continent under one government so you can industrialize. That's bullshit. Have I answered your question?
Obadele? Okay, great. I have two questions from our students here. The first question is, if I heard Dr. Chinweizu clearly, did he refer to the two conferences held by Dr. Kwame Nkrumah and George Padmore in Accra as a nonsense initiative which led to the foundation of the AU? And if he did say that, why? That's one question. Do you want to take both of the questions or one at a time? He has two.
The way to answer that question is to see the results. And I think I've answered it. What's the second one?
Okay, the second question, Dr. Chinweizu, would you agree that a staggering, what is this, non-controversial? Non-trivial problem of Africa is the numerous ethnic and tribal conflicts which the visitors created among us in Africa. How can we correct this familial alienation created by the Europeans in Africa? And is it feasible to do?
Let me start with the feasibility. Feasibility is up to you. If you decide you don't want to do it, then it's not feasible. If you decide you want to do the job, then it's feasible. I think there's a saying that where there's a will, there's a way. You'll find the way to do it. Singapore, at independence, everybody said, forget it, Singapore is finished. It has no resources. It's a tiny island, blah, blah, blah. Chinese Singaporeans, Indian English Singaporeans. Religious riots taking place in the place. But nevertheless, Lee Kuan Yew and his team said, we are going to solve this problem. And they did within 20 years. So if we are looking for alibis, we have them plenty. If we are looking to solve problems and be victorious, we can find ways to solve them and be victorious. That's why I say it's a matter of your will. If you have the will to do it, because if you don't do it, you are finished. They say that nothing concentrates a man's mind better than the knowledge that he'll be hanged in 24 hours. Nothing will concentrate our minds best than knowing that if we don't do what we need to do, we are finished as a race during this century. So if that concentrates your mind, I think you can find a way to solve these problems.
Okay, he said, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So what would, another question here, what would be the benefits of unifying Africa today? Or are there any benefits based on Nkrumah and Marcus Garvey's dreams of unifying Africa as one continent?
Point of correction. Marcus Garvey did not talk of unifying Africa. That's an Nkrumahist concept, pure and simple. Marcus Garvey thought of creating a Black African super state, that's what he called it, in some part of Africa. He first brought up the idea of a United States of Africa, but then clarified it later and said he was talking of a United States of Black Africa. And in the same speech where he made the clarification in London, he made it clear that all that was needed was some part of Africa, not the whole of Africa. He told the colonialists, you can have some part of this part of Africa, you can have that part of Africa, but we must have our own part of Africa where we can develop ourselves. So people must give up the error that Garvey was talking of unifying Africa. He didn't start that idea. And from his perspective, it was superfluous. It was not necessary. So I don't see any benefit in terms of our fundamental problems in trying to unify all of Africa, especially including the Arabs. The Arabs are not part of Pan-Africanism and should never have been brought into it. And that was one of the problems that was caused by those two conferences. You go and bring in Arabs who are part of those who inflicted the Maafa on us. It's like mice wanting to liberate themselves and going to bring in the cat among themselves to join in the movement. Have I answered your question?
Okay, She said, absolutely.
Okay, next question.
And so, Barbara, one of the other questions from the field, the youth are asking, so what are the, main things that they should do right now? What should they be focused on? I believe you gave some things at the beginning. Maybe you could just maybe recap one or two for them.
Well, a lot of it is negative work, getting rid of wrong ideas and wrong habits. And I did mention a notion of African time or CP time. If you want Africa to survive, you've got to give that up. It is incompatible with an industrial society. You can't run a factory where all the people who are manning different machines don't come on time. The factory will not start on time. And because some people are not there, nothing will be produced. So everybody must be at their desk or at their station on time for the factory to work. Otherwise, it's costing you money. And the price of what you produce will be higher because of that. So we must give up this idea that, oh yeah, we can model along with African time or CP time. It doesn't work in an industrial society. So that's why I made that point that this is one of the first things we must give up. The other one we must give up is the notion that we need a continental union government. It's a stupid idea. God knows why Padma first introduced it and Nkrumah picked it up. We know where Padma got it. He got it from Moscow. When he was working in the Kremlin, the Russians, the Soviet Union had this grand idea of creating a United States of Asia that would include everybody, Japan, Korea, Mongolia, China, India, into one big government. Padma, after he left them, transferred that concept to the African situation. But he made one in his own version of it. It would be a federation of smaller federations. He had put forth the idea, but in preparation for the conference, the CIAS conference, he traveled to see the people who were being invited, places like Ethiopia, Egypt, Morocco, name them. That was his first time visiting Africa and traveling and seeing for himself. After he abandoned it, but Nkrumah, for whatever reasons of his own, private reasons, picked it up and used it as the framework for his Pan-Africanism. So it's one of those crazy ideas that people imported. In this case, Padma imported it. Anyway, the bottom line is that you don't need a continental African government if you want to industrialize or even defend yourself. Have I addressed your question sufficiently? If there's something else you want me to clarify about it, please say so.
Yes, yes, he said that clarifies it for him. We have another question. These young folks here have lots of questions for you, which is wonderful.
That's excellent.
Great, because this is for them. So another question is, so whose responsibility should it be for the change in Africa? Should it be our leaders or African elites and writers or authors? Because it is like everyone is writing and talking, but are not walking the talk. No action.
That's the end of the question.
That's the last part of the question.
Okay.
It became a statement.
All right, no problem, no problem. But the responsibility lies with those who see the problem and want to solve it. It has to be a self-selecting group. You can't wait for everybody in the elite or the government or wherever, or the trade unions, to get around and do it. If you look at any movement that saved a country or a people, you find that some people took the initiative. Those who started the American Revolution was not every American. Some did, and in the process convinced enough of them to join with them in the struggle to defeat the British. The Russian Revolution was not started by everybody. Some people did and fell by the wayside along the way. Others persevered and pulled it off in the end by converting enough people to join them in that cause. The Chinese Revolution that gave us the China that's today a major economic and military power was started by less than 50 people. There were small groups, study groups in different parts of China. Then at one point, they held a meeting to start the Chinese Communist Party. There were only 12 of them who came for that meeting. They built the movement and the party that won the civil war in China and began to transform China. So you don't wait for everybody. Those who are mindful of the challenge and want to win will get themselves together and start it, and the others can join them when they get converted. I hope that helps.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I have a question. You and I have been communicating lately around leadership in our organizations in general, and how, and you have given some examples from Oromo democracy.
Is the line dead or what? I'm not hearing anything.
In, you know, the next generations for some form of leadership. Can you talk a little bit about that and its relevance to, you know, what we're talking about today and what young people can learn from that?
Well, the little I can say about that is that there are examples of pre-colonial African leadership organizations and structures, how pre-colonial African societies were governed, that we can learn plenty from if we want to reconstruct our societies. The Oromo democracy example is handy because it's a detailed study of how Oromo society was structured and how leadership was organized and people were trained for leadership and controlled by the people, even when they were leaders. So it's an entirely indigenous African system of democracy that had many features that even those in the West don't have till now. And it was quite successful. It lasted until the Berlin Conference defeats, when African countries were overrun and their systems were destroyed. But even the remnants of it that operated under the colonial blanket are still helpful to us in understanding how we should structure our societies so that young people from an early age are groomed and trained for leadership. and for obeying the interests of their people rather than the interests of foreigners. It's not the only example. The Akan system in Ghana, I think, was studied by Kesley Hayford. I think he wrote a book about it, and several other people wrote about aspects of it. But the point is that if you look into your traditions, you will find models of organization and leadership selection and training. You don't just wake up and become a nana, do you? You have to go through a training, and the way you are selected, and the fact that you don't do what you want, you do what the Council of Chiefs tell you to do. It's their opinion that you carry out, not what happens to be what we want. This is a way of putting checks on all kinds of crazy ambitions of dictators. The Nanas were not dictators until under the British occupation, when the British made them agents of British colonialism, the way they did to chiefs all over Africa. In Nigeria, they had what they called warrant chiefs. They'd come to a community, pick some riffraff, give him a warrant, and give him power. Give him troops, soldiers or policemen, so he could terrorize his people in the interest of the British. These were not elected or selected by their traditional procedures, but imposed by the British. So this was one of the ways they destroyed the traditional African leadership organization and selection process. And my point is that we have a duty to go back and understand our processes and see what we can learn from them in organizing for our future. So in terms of our organizations and how they can organize.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Next question, if any.
And it would be the last one, but however, I will tell you that the students here have said that they are going to invite you to come and speak to them here soon. So they've asked for your information, and I'll pass that on so you can come and visit them, because they have a lot more questions. A lot, they're saying. Okay. So we'll arrange that. We'll work on that. Any questions from anybody else in the virtual space as well? We'll take one more question. Then if there's any other question, can put it in the chat. No more questions? Okay. Well, on behalf of the African Heritage Studies Association, University of Cape Coast, and PANAFEST Foundation, we want to thank you so much for giving us some of your time this evening and really addressing some very critical issues for us. We hope that we will have another opportunity to have you speak to the African Heritage Studies Association and some of our members soon. But we also know that you are about the work. So we are going to be talking to you soon about some developments that have recently happened and an initiative that we're putting together to actually try to organize more of the young people to take some concrete steps and actions to keep moving us towards liberation that we need. I definitely know that we will look forward to reading this special edition. That's, I think you said it was a compilation of your presentations from, was it from the Great African Thinkers Conference, of which you were the first scholar in person to be to speak at that conference. I remember it very well. Obadele was also involved in that. So we look forward to reading what you have done. And I think you said you're also putting together, you know, some more works for us. It's not enough that we already have the young people here. We've talked about your books, The West and the Rest of Us, and Decolonizing the African Mind, and all of those other books that they're shaking their heads that yes, they're digesting now. So this is really great news, and they want you to come and talk to them, and we want you to come and engage with us again. So thank you so much, and also everyone who joined us again today. This has been a fantastic week. We are going to have all of the sessions for this week placed on YouTube. But right now, if you want to catch anything from earlier in the week, we've been streaming this live on our Facebook page as well. So you will have access to all of the discussions that we've had throughout the week. We started out with Mama Bello. She was actually Miana Bello from Haiti. She was actually on earlier, and maybe she hasn't been able to reconnect, but she actually wanted to also hear you. So we may find a way to also bring the two of you together in a session so she can engage you more. But thank you again for your time. Thank you everybody for joining us at PANAFEST. We will be posting on our website the next events that we are going to have definitely in October. Since we have had our annual conference here at PANAFEST, we will have our annual meeting. We will be electing new officers from president on down. So we invite you to look for the dates in October when we will be coming together as an organization to elect new leadership and continue the mission of Dr. John Henry Clarke. For those of you who have not seen this yet, we have just done a second edition of our legacy book on Dr. John Henry Clarke. It has a new foreword that I penned, and also some other new sections on here. And I will put in the chat for you the link where you can order your copy. We would appreciate your support so that we can continue to do some of the work that we need to do, including being here at PANAFEST and organizing some of the youth in Africa, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. You'll hear some of the great news that's coming from some of the work and networks and meetings that we've been having throughout this week. If you want to see any more of the other PANAFEST activities that are going on now, they are streaming some of their events live also on their Facebook page. You can go to PANAFEST Ghana and look up their Facebook page and see some of the things that are going on. They've been having music and concerts and different things happening all week long. And then tomorrow will be the end of PANAFEST, where they will be, let me see if I can get the schedule here. We have posted the agenda on our website, but I just want to mention the last event tomorrow is on Emancipation Day, Sunday, August 1st. They'll be at Asan Manso, and I'm not sure if they're still going to do this, but there was going to be a Durbar, commemorative Durbar, wreath laying and pilgrimage to Dankunsuo. So I'm not sure if they're still going to do all those activities because of COVID. Things have been kind of, pared down. But tomorrow is the last day of PANAFEST activities. And so we will be making our way back to the US. We have had a delegation of about 8 or 10 people here. But if we can, we have one of our board members who is with us. And if she would, I would appreciate it if she could also say some final words on behalf of our president, who is already out at another PANAFEST function. Dr. Eaton, are you still with us? Yes, there you are. Great.
Yes,
so I
hello.
turn it over to you for some final words.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. I apologize for the light in the environment. I've enjoyed this session so much, and thank you so much, Dr. Chinweizu. I'm just excited and about all the possibilities moving forward, and I think I'll be inviting you to my campus as well, even if virtually. So much wisdom was shared tonight. I'm Kalinda Eaton. I'm a professor of African and African American Studies at the University of Oklahoma, and also a board member of AHSA. And so on behalf of the president, Dr. Ife Williams, and the board members, the other board members of the African Heritage Studies Association, we just want to say thank you, Midase, for your participation, everyone, the entire audience in the conference over the past week. Whether you were here in Ghana with us or in the diaspora, we've heard from elders, we've heard from community activists, practitioners, and the all-important youth, the students, the young people. We've heard them all discuss our past, our present, our future. Am I unmuted? Am I now unmuted?
Yes, for some reason it jumped. It's jumped back and forth here.
Okay, I don't know what the last thing is that you heard, but the gist is thank you. Thank you so much. And so it's been important to hear from the youth is what I was saying, especially as we're thinking about moving forward, especially as we're thinking about how these words need to turn into action, how they always need to turn into action. So to all of the presenters, the moderators, the technical staff, students, again, we appreciate you, specifically the University of the Cape Coast, the Center for National Culture, the various departments of music and dance and theater and film studies and graduate studies, and the African and International Studies Center, the chairs of PANAFEST, the entire PANAFEST crew, the illustrious Professor S.C. Sutherland Addy, Nana Kobina and Ketsia, Rabbi Kohain, the Vice Chancellor of UCC, and we cannot forget our rock star, our chair of the conference, Dr. Afia Zakia, who is the vice president of AHSA, but also has been so wonderful and gracious and on it, and has just presented a fabulous conference over the past few days. And I've watched her move back and forth and in and out of this hybrid mode, and I am just in awe. And we are so thank you. So we thank you so much, and we're so grateful for you, Afia. So thank you so much. None of this could have been done without you. And with that, I say good night. Hopefully you all heard some of that. Good night.